Hypnic Jerk. You're lying in bed, finally drifting off, your body going heavy, your thoughts starting to blur into something looser and stranger, and then out of nowhere, your whole body jolts, like you just missed a step on a staircase that wasn't there, and your eyes snap open, heart going a little fast, completely awake again for no reason you can point to. That's a hypnic jerk, sometimes called a sleep start, and it's one of the most common involuntary movements the human body makes, happening to most people at some point, some far more than others. The leading explanation is that as your brain shifts from wakefulness into sleep, your muscles relax faster than your nervous system expects them to, and for a brief moment, your brain misreads that sudden drop in muscle tension as an actual fall, so it fires off a reflex to catch you. It's essentially a false alarm, your body bracing for an impact that was never coming. What makes it different from a regular twitch is the timing. It almost only happens in that narrow window right at the edge of sleep, never once you're actually under. Caffeine, stress, and being overtired all seem to make it more frequent, though nobody fully understands why some nights it happens 3 times and other nights not at all. Your brain, it turns out, still isn't entirely sure sleep is safe. Sleep paralysis. You open your eyes and you're fully awake, aware of the room, the ceiling, the shape of your own blanket, but you can't move, not a finger, not your jaw. You try to call out and nothing happens. And in that stillness, some people report a heavy pressure on their chest or the unmistakable sense that something else is in the room with them, watching. That's sleep paralysis, and it happens when your brain wakes up before your body does. During REM sleep, your brain deliberately paralyzes your muscles so you don't physically act out your dreams, a mechanism that mostly works perfectly, except when consciousness resurfaces a little too early, while that paralysis is still switched on. The hallucinations that often come with it, the shadowy figure, the pressure on the chest, are thought to be leftover dream imagery bleeding into a brain that's technically awake and trying to make sense of a body it can't control. It's not a ghost. It's not being held down by anything real. It's your nervous system caught between 2 states at once, running 2 different programs simultaneously. What makes it terrifying isn't the paralysis itself, plenty of people barely notice. It's the vivid, dreamlike hallucinations layered directly on top of a fully conscious mind. It usually lasts under a minute. It rarely feels like under a minute. Exploding head syndrome. You're lying there, eyes closed, almost asleep, and suddenly you hear it. A gunshot, a slamming door, a cymbal crash, something loud and violent and completely convincing. You bolt upright, certain something happened in the house. Nothing did. Nobody else heard anything. That's exploding head syndrome, a real clinical term despite how dramatic it sounds, and it describes a sudden, loud, imagined noise that occurs right as someone is falling asleep or waking up. It's not dangerous, and it's not actually in your ears. It's your brain misfiring during the shutdown process. The leading explanation is that as different regions of the brain power down for sleep, they don't all switch off in perfect sync. And one theory suggests the auditory and motor neurons briefly fire together in a burst that the brain interprets as an explosive external sound. What makes it different from a normal dream sound is that it happens before sleep actually begins in that fully conscious threshold state, which is why it feels so real and so startling. It's more common than most people realize. Plenty of people have experienced it once or twice and just never had a name to attach to it. It's harmless. It's also one of the stranger tricks a shutting down brain can play on you. Hypnagogia. Right before you fall asleep, your thoughts start doing something strange. They stop following logic. A half-formed sentence drifts through your head that means nothing. A face appears for a second that you don't recognize. A shape or color flickers behind your closed eyes with no story attached to it at all. That loose, dreamlike, in-between mental state is called hypnagogia, the transitional zone between being awake and being asleep, or your brain is still generating thoughts but has stopped organizing them the way it does while you're conscious. Some people see abstract shapes and patterns. Some hear fragments of sound or voices. Some just get flashes of imagery that don't connect to anything happening in their day. The leading explanation is that as your brain downshifts towards sleep, the logical, filtering parts slow down before the more associative, imagistic parts do. So for a few minutes, you get raw mental content with no editor attached. What makes it different from an actual dream is that you're still technically aware it's happening. You can sometimes even nudge it slightly, whereas dreams fully absorb you once they start. Some inventors and artists have claimed to mine this state deliberately, catching strange associations right at the edge of sleep before they dissolve. Most of us just lose them the second we're actually under. Sleep inertia, you wake up from a nap or from an alarm that pulled you out of a deep stretch of sleep, and for the next 20 minutes, you're basically useless. Your thinking is slow, simple decisions feel oddly hard. You might even answer a question wrong that you'd normally get instantly. That heavy, foggy disorientation is sleep inertia, and it's the reason waking up doesn't actually mean you're awake. Not fully, not right away. The leading explanation involves your brain's different regions waking up at different speeds. The areas responsible for basic alertness come online fast, while the areas responsible for higher reasoning and quick decision-making lag behind by several minutes, sometimes longer if you were pulled out of deep sleep specifically. This is part of why naps longer than about 20 minutes can leave you feeling worse than if you hadn't napped at all. You're more likely to wake up mid-deep sleep cycle instead of a lighter one. What makes it different from just being tired is that sleep inertia isn't about how much sleep you got. It's about the exact moment you were interrupted. You can be well rested and still walk around foggy for a while. Your brain isn't lazy in that window. It's just not finished booting up yet. False awakening. You dream that your alarm goes off and you get up, get dressed, maybe even make coffee, going through a completely normal morning. And then you actually wake up, in bed, alarm going off for real, and you realize none of that happened. The whole routine was a dream nested inside your sleep. That's a false awakening, a dream where you believe you've woken up and resumed your day, sometimes with startling, mundane accuracy. What makes it unsettling isn't the strangeness. False awakenings are often boringly realistic, which is exactly the problem. There's nothing obviously dreamlike to tip you off. The leading explanation is that your brain is capable of simulating ordinary waking life just as convincingly as it simulates anything fantastical. And without an external anchor to reality, there's no built-in way to tell the difference from inside the dream. Some people experience layered false awakenings, waking up from one false awakening only to be in another, sometimes several in a row before actually surfacing into real consciousness. What makes this different from an ordinary vivid dream is the specific belief that the dream has ended. That's the illusion doing its work. It's a strange reminder that your sense of "I'm definitely awake right now" is running on trust. Most of the time, that trust is justified. Occasionally, it just isn't. Somniloquy. Someone tells you the next morning that you had a full conversation in your sleep. Clear sentences, sometimes an entire back and forth, and you have absolutely no memory of any of it. That's somniloquy, the clinical term for talking in your sleep, and it can range from a mungled word or two to fully coherent, occasionally very funny, sentences. It happens across every stage of sleep, though the content tends to differ. Lighter sleep talking is often closer to normal waking speech, while talking during deep sleep is more likely to be garbled or nonsensical. The leading explanation is that the brain regions responsible for speech aren't fully shut off during sleep the way you'd expect, and under the right conditions, usually stress, sleep deprivation, or a fever, they can activate enough to produce actual audible words, even while the rest of the brain is offline and unaware it's happening. What makes it different from talking while dreaming on purpose, obviously, is that there's no intention behind it, and typically zero memory of it afterward. The words are disconnected from the story your sleeping mind might be telling itself. It's almost always harmless. It's also one of the few sleep phenomena where you're not the one who experiences it. You're the one who has to be told about it by someone else who was awake to hear it. Restless legs. You lie down, finally ready to sleep, and there's this deep, uncomfortable, hard to describe urge in your legs. Not quite pain, not quite an itch, just a pull to move them. So you shift, stretch, kick the blanket off, and for a second, it's better. And then it creeps back. That's restless legs, and in its more clinical form, it's known as Willis-Ekbom disease, named after two of the researchers who studied it. And it describes an involuntary urge to move the legs, usually worse in the evening, usually relieved briefly by movement, and nothing else. Nobody has fully nailed down the mechanism, but the leading explanation points to dopamine signaling issues in the brain, the same chemical system involved in movement and reward, and it's also linked to low iron levels in some people. What makes it different from just being fidgety is that it's not a habit or a choice. It's a physical sensation demanding a response. Ignoring it doesn't make it go away. It usually gets worse. It tends to show up right as your body is supposed to be settling down, which makes the timing particularly cruel. Some people go their whole lives with a mild version of this and just assume everyone's legs do that right before sleep. Most legs don't.